Hello, everyone. This is the Hidden Histories Collective. We're super excited to be here today to share with you this breaking news story that just broke yesterday. Now, as you guys may be aware, 23andMe has filed for bankruptcy and their CEO has stepped down. Now, millions of users are asking one major question: what happens to our DNA data? And even California's Attorney General is even urging people to delete their data from the platform entirely amid growing concerns over who could gain access to it.
23andMe has filed for bankruptcy, and it's opened a serious conversation about DNA and privacy.
The genetic testing company has the data of more than 15 million customers. So what happens to it now? California Attorney General Rob Bonta joins us this morning. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
I think people heard this, over the last day or so, but really you have a warning for customers. They really do need to delete that data from the company immediately. If somebody's kind of sitting there going, okay, it's a news headline, or I figured my data was out there anyway, what do you want them to know?
I want them to know what their rights are. And in California, we have some of the strongest privacy protections in the nation, in the world, really. And it allows you to have a right to know how your data is being used, a right to opt out of it being used in certain ways. And if you've provided it, and if someone is holding it, a company is holding your data, a right to delete it if you wish. And we want people to know right now that 23andMe is going through a significant financial transformation. They've declared bankruptcy. They have laid off 40% of their staff, meaning some of the guardrails may be coming down. Some of the quality assurance may be decreased. There could be less customer service and decreased protections of their privacy with the cybersecurity team. And even when 23andMe was at full capacity 18 months ago, they had a significant data breach where 7 million of the nearly over 14 million users' data was exposed. And so we want people to make informed decisions. We want them to have knowledge of their rights, knowledge of the current status of 23andMe, and make the decision that's best for them. Not everyone will want to delete, and we're not saying that you should delete. We're saying that you should know about your right to delete and exercise that right as you see appropriate.
So when you submitted your cheek swab, you guys probably imagined discovering fun facts about your heritage, not worrying about your genetic information being sold off or lost in legal limbo. And now this story forces us to ask, just how much can we trust these DNA companies? Not only with our data, but with the accuracy of the results they give us. Now, let's break this all down, because I know a lot of you have questioned, genealogy from the perspective of, how do we know we're a certain identity? I took my DNA and I am 30% African or 30% Ghanaian. But what I really want to do is break this down for each of you guys and really stress some things here as we move forward, because as a genealogist, I have to rely on what I can prove, not on what is a guess. So let's break this down. So what does ethnicity estimates actually mean? Now, when you talk about commercial DNA companies like Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, and MyHeritage, what they're really doing is comparing your DNA to what is called reference populations, or groups of people with deep roots in specific regions. But here's the catch. Every company uses different samples and algorithms. That's why, you might be 20% Irish on one platform, but 15% or even 25% on another. And remember, these numbers are estimates. They're not hard facts. So this is most important. There's no global standard that defines what Irish or Ghanaian DNA actually looks like, right? I want you guys to be really clear on that. So, and another thing to remember is borders shift and people move. So modern country borders don't reflect ancient migrations. So for instance, your Irish DNA might include Scottish, Welsh, or even Northern French ancestry. And the same can be said with African heritage. If your results say you're 30% Nigerian, that could overlap with ethnic groups in Togo, Cameroon, and Ghana. So, remember the nations are actually political constructs. Ethnicity and genetics are not confined to them. So, whenever you talk about your ancestry DNA, they're not necessarily considering all of those different borders that currently exist and that even might have existed in the past. Okay. The other thing is that DNA inheritance isn't an exact split. So you don't inherit DNA in clean, predictable chunks. And through a process called recombination, some ancestral DNA gets lost over generations. So even if your great-grandparent was 100% Irish, for instance, you might not inherit a precise 12.5%. Your DNA test might show more or none at all. And the other thing is, when it comes to African ancestry, the estimates are even trickier. And here's why. The African reference databases are smaller. Very, very, very small. Fewer Africans have taken DNA tests, so there's less data to pull from. So ethnic groups across Africa also share overlapping genetic traits due to centuries of migration and trade. So this makes it even harder for tests to be specific and accurate when it comes to African ancestry, right? So results can and do change. So remember, these DNA companies are regularly updating their databases. So you might be 40% Ghanaian today, but after an algorithm update, you're suddenly 28%. And these updates reflect new data, not necessarily new ancestry. So it's a moving target and it's not a final answer. And so now with 23andMe filing for bankruptcy, the bigger concern is what happens to your data. Will it be sold, merged, misused? And users are really in the dark right now because no one knows what's going to happen to the company. And here's the biggest one. And this is what I want everyone to remember about commercial DNA test. And I want to be really crystal clear on this. Not all DNA tests are created equal, especially when it comes to legal matters. So if you're trying to prove paternity, immigration eligibility, or evidence in a court case, a commercial DNA test won't cut it at all. Court-admissible DNA tests follow a strict chain of custody. That means that the DNA sample that's collected, it's collected by a certified professional for one, and your identity is verified, and the entire process is documented. And these tests are performed in an AABB or CLIA certified lab, and the results are legally binding. So compare that to commercial kits where you swab your cheek at home and you drop it in the mail. There's no guarantee you actually took the test, and the results are not certified for legal use. So if you're dealing with legal issues, child support, custody, inheritance, or anything that requires courtroom evidence, make sure to use a court-approved DNA testing service. Because if you walk in there and you say, oh, well, I got my DNA test from Ancestry DNA, the judge is going to look at you and say, nah, that's not going to work. So all in all, so what should you trust when it comes to your DNA and your ancestry? Well, here's the big takeaway. Here's a few takeaways, actually. You can use commercial DNA tests as a starting point, but by far it is not a conclusion, right? So the biggest thing that you want to do is you have to back up your research and your discoveries with historical records like birth certificates, census data, and land deeds, because that is what's real, that is what's black and white, and that is what most courts will recognize. And you also want to be very, very mindful of privacy risks, especially when companies go under. And when it comes to African or indigenous ancestry, supplement your DNA with oral histories and regional research. Again, you got to go back to the historical records. That is everything. That's why as a genealogist, I have to go by what I can prove and not what is a guess, okay? So yes, commercial DNA tests can be insightful, but they're not foolproof. And the news about 23andMe reminds us that your DNA is valuable data. It's not just a curiosity. So you protect your identity, trace your roots with care, and don't let a percentage define your story. So again, thank you guys for tuning into Hidden Histories Collective. And if you have any questions, you guys can always shoot us an email. You can make comments here. All of that's valid. All of that's great. And we welcome your comments. We welcome all of your feedback. So again, hopefully this was an amazing discovery and realization for many of you, and confirmation of your journey on this genealogical journey that you guys are on. We'll be talking to you guys soon, and we will keep you posted on this story as the developments unfold. Thanks.